Welcome to the Tech Quarterback Show. I'm your host, Brent Chapman. This is the show that gives you a front row seat inside the huddle with the people driving innovation, building teams, and keeping your business moving forward. Your company's technology quarterback. Today, we're joined by a veteran technology executive with more than 2 decades of leadership experience driving transformation and innovation. Over his career, he's led through multiple acquisitions, helped guide major cybersecurity and compliance initiatives, and even co-authored a book on IT leadership. Joining me to discuss that and more, Chief Information Officer, Jeff Smedley. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
I love it. Glad to be here.
You spent more than 20 years as CIO at J&J. Is that right? Worldwide Services.
Yes.
That's incredible. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to now, your experience as a CIO, and when you look back over your career, what are you most proud of, and what do you hope teams remember you most about your leadership?
Absolutely. Well, it kind of starts pretty early on with, building a team based upon culture, servant leader to the core. So with an engineering background and designing big multinational networks, I was able to jump in from a technical perspective to all of my team and be able to understand their challenges from a technical perspective. Obviously, we know that in general, IT people are more introverted. So the more that you can connect with them, absolutely the better. Over my 20 years with J&J, it was kind of strange because I was coming out of virtual CIO consulting. I'd done an acquisition.
Jeff, real quick, what is J&J? Do you want to explain the business real quick?
Yeah. So J&J, well, what was J&J? We were acquired strategically, but what was J&J is a 50-year-old company that was service-based to the DoD. So everything from emptying trash cans and mopping floors to building buildings and literally everything between, on 12 different countries and mainly based Konos, but that was the essential part of it. So service-based company for DoD.
Great. And you were saying about servant leadership and how that was impacted there.
Yeah, so I think one of my greatest accomplishments was certainly the team that I built and the way that the culture became self-sustaining. But it started with being able to not be so administrative, but be hands-on. So in every day and every meeting, I was able to engage from a technical perspective. In a lot of cases, I was the engineer for it.
Wow.
And the biggest accomplishment, I think, was, taking this company that was privately held, family owned, and integrating them with a large private equity firm that really had high expectations for process and organization to ultimately sell the company strategically to CBRE for $1 billion in February of 24.
And then I think the last time I saw you, Jeff, was about a year ago, and you were recently entering retirement.
Yes.
So 1 year out of retirement, do we love retirement so far?
We absolutely love retirement. I think, any life transition like that, there's going to be some apprehension and some anxiety. And I think I had known that retirement was imminent, and had conveyed that to my team and let them know that this was coming. But in the months coming up to that, there was a big push for some of the promises that we had made as a company to CBRE with regard to the cybersecurity standard CMMC for the DoD, and we lived up to that absolutely.
That's
We were
awesome.
company number 7 to actually get it. And out of 80,000 contractors, there's only 300 or 400 right now that have it. So being company
Wow,
number 7 definitely was a
big
big
deal.
milestone. And once we kind of got through that, I knew that the retirement was coming. So
So
all the
you're kind of like the John Elway of CIOs. You won the championship on the way out. I like it, Jeff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to retire one on top, and I think that's absolutely what happened. Interestingly enough, and kind of personally, I'm married for 33 years to my beautiful wife. That's,
Congratulations.
we dated, so 33 years, but we dated for 5 years before we got married, had 3 kids, we're empty nest, and now, she's going to get me full time. I'm not going to be traveling the world. I'm not going to be doing all this stuff. And I think for me, I was a little bit concerned that she wouldn't like me and she'd be stuck with me all this time. So I had set up some strategic consulting to CEOs, board of directors, with regard to cybersecurity or just regard with technology and business. And I probably overcorrected a little bit because I wanted to make sure I had this contingency plan if
Yeah,
she
yeah, that
didn't
makes
like
sense.
me. Turns out she likes me.
That's
And,
great. Congratulations.
and now I've got to mitigate all these clients that I've collected and try to make sure that I'm focusing on what the priority is, which is absolutely going back to the beginning of our marriage and remembering what that was like.
It's kind of funny, right? So you get married, and then generally, there's a little bit of time without kids. And then you have kids for 18 plus years in your house, depending on how many you have. And then you have kids out of the house, but you're still active parents because they're in
Right.
college. And then you have where you're entering now is retirement. And it's like 4 different stages of getting to know each other. Oh, if you include dating before all of that, too, right? It's like, you
Yeah.
have to continue to evolve. Jeff, this is not a marriage show, so I will I will stop there with the marriage consulting, but I appreciate that. I think that's an awesome for perspective for people to hear. Now I have to ask you about this. You have logged more than 650 skydives, 300 of them professionally. That's incredible. What drew you to skydiving, and kind of give me the background on that, and what perspective or lessons has that experience given you that translate into the leadership and decision making you made as an executive?
Absolutely. And I think, anecdotally, I'm still afraid of heights. Terrified of heights, vertigo everywhere. But with that, I had a key employee that was very much into skydiving. And with getting a connection to this employee that was key for a lot of movement within the company, I agreed to go skydive.
Wow.
What I thought I would be doing would be a tandem skydive. And what I found out after I got there was that no, I'd be jumping out on my own. And
Tandem is when the person you're just attached to like a professional that
correct,
jumps with you. So you're just going along for the ride, but they're doing all the work. I got you.
correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, pretty much just the passenger.
Yeah.
And I found out quickly that I had been signed up for advanced free fall. So I was in 8 hours of class during the day. And
Whoa.
then at the end of the day, I was going to jump out by myself. And I was terrified. I gave myself a 50-50 chance that I would survive. But I was committed up to that point, so I did it. And so jumped out and you know, realized how beautiful our Earth is, and realized that it wasn't about heights and that it was more or less looking like at a picture. on the ground, and the sense of heights was away, but the freedom to be in free fall was absolutely addicting. And
Wow.
then, of course, with my personality, I had to be the best. I had to be the working skydiver and
You
really take
weren't
the
stopping at the one
no,
skydive.
no. And I had to take it to the next level and become a professional skydiver and be respected and revered within the drop zones. And I jumped all over the world. And how that relates, Brent, to leadership is that you're fully committed when you leave that door. So everything that you do before you leave that door, prep wise, muscle memory, understanding, situational awareness, your ability to process vast amounts of information in a very short time. For me, what I understood with my personality was that I had this ability to slow down time. And I'd
That's
kind
awesome.
of seen it through my consulting careers where there was, distinct emergencies or distinct things on fire, and you had a chaos around me. And I was the one kind of E.F. Hutton voice that saw clearly, was very grounded, and was able to think through very complex situations in a very short amount of time. And that really lended itself to skydiving, where if you allow time to slow down, you're able to handle any emergency, handle anything that needs to happen. But if you're in real time, you're going to have some problems. So with that, kind of getting to the door, all of this prep had to happen, all of this learning, all this understanding, a very technical aspect of the gear, and the way it works, and the way the failover systems are, and all of those things. So in that approach with teams and individuals, you want to make sure that before they leave the door, before they release that code, that they have done everything to ensure their survival, the company's survival, et cetera. So I think that was a very tangible relationship.
And I love that example because I think it sets the if that is if jumping out of an airplane and all the prep that you need to do to to be safe, right? If you apply that same level of complexity and care in your job, right, and how you treat other people, you'll be successful. See, I heard this a while back, and it always makes me kind of chuckle. You know, if a surgeon screws up, you die. If a pilot screws up, he dies.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So it definitely changes the care and the understanding and what you have to put into it is because if you mess up jumping out of the plane now, you apply that to work, which is not life or death, right? At the end of the day, no one's going to die if the email goes down.
Right.
Um, Most likely not, at least.
Right.
But I think to your point, if you have that level of care and attention to detail, that can translate. If you can do that for skydiving, that'll translate over into what you do as a professional. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so, one quick question here: I had 350 skydives as a videographer. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you have to explain that to me. What does that mean? Were you jumping to like tape other people or
It's exactly right. So my responsibility was when people went out, and the vast majority of people go out for their one skydive, their one bucket list item. They have this option at most drop zones to get a video of that. Well, it takes a very special type of flyer that's going to be able to fly and be able to capture
well,
the other person flying at the same time. So falling
yeah.
at 120 miles an
You
hour,
have to be pretty trained to do that. Yeah.
correct. It takes 250 jumps before you're qualified to
Wow.
do that. Yeah.
I guess I didn't it makes sense when you say that. I guess I didn't realize that. Well, Jeff, I want to jump into some of the technology stuff, but let's pause for 30 seconds for a word from our sponsor, Qentelli.
Awesome.
Welcome back. Just continuing our conversation with Jeff Smedley, former Chief Information Officer of J&J Worldwide Services, and currently enjoying retirement with skydiving. You can go back if you want to hear all about that. We dove into that. But now we're going to jump into questions, or we're going to jump into a conversation around business intelligence and analytics, and kind of jump into some more technical aspects. Jeff, you've worked in industries where real-time data can make or break operational services. Business intelligence and decision support systems have evolved dramatically in that time. How do you see business intelligence changing the way organizations operate, and what separates those who use data effectively from those who just collect it?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, you have these classes of data and multiple sources of truth. So if you take data science and you apply this value to the data based upon the quality of that data, you're able to then make real decisions based upon reconciled data. So, for instance, you have data that is coming from the edge. It's coming from a subordinate system, not necessarily the system of record, but certainly a collection area. And as you ingest that into your lake house, into your lake, you want to make sure that any decisions that are made from that specific data are taken with the context that it's not fully reconciled. And then you have some data that you ingest that may be partially reconciled. So maybe there is some reconciliation with maybe some cost data, but it hasn't necessarily been fully reconciled with the ERP. And you then are able to classify that data as medium or as somewhat reconciled. And then you have your gold data, your data that is fully reconciled, that is applicable for real business decisions, and the ability to understand where each level of that data that you're using for business decisions is extremely important in making the correct decision.
It's interesting that you touch on something that I think is a bit of a cultural challenge, right? You're talking about how some data is clean, some data is dirty, right? I think this is a cultural challenge in that businesses or leaders, and I think it varies from leader to leader, right? And departments of trust and adoption of data-driven decisions. Like, do I trust this data? Even when it's clean, do I really trust this data? And then being able to make decisions based on that data and not my gut or what I've seen before, but actually being able to trust what you see. Do you think that varies from organization, or do you think that's more just varies from leader to leader? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary from leader to leader, culture to culture, certainly vertical to vertical.
Yeah.
There are
Good
some
point.
verticals that rely completely on human insight. Um,
Like
the
call center data should be pretty objective.
it really should be. I mean, your ACD flows that are
Yep.
coming in, as well as correlating with
That's
number of sales or number of support. However, that should be pretty quantitative.
yeah. And there should be a higher level of trust for that than say something that's more subjective.
Correct. Correct. So that the example on that would be it's the beginning of a quarter, and you ask all your salespeople to turn in their projections. Are you going to run your business based upon what gets turned in?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. Is that dirty data? It might be clean data. I don't know if I trust it.
Depends on the culture. It depends on the culture and the
That's true.
personal peril a lot applied to it. So if you put some personal peril on, on what their projections are and saying, hey, listen, you're not going to get your bonus if if you're turning in a number that you can't achieve,
Yeah.
then okay. But then the culture has to be also reversed too with, okay, well, if you've undersold what was possible, then, so yeah, it's culture based.
Yeah. So Jeff, moving along to dashboards and reporting, every leader loves a good dashboard. I
Yes.
haven't met a CEO that doesn't love a dashboard. But not all dashboards tell the right story. The key is aligning what you measure and what truly drives success. What was your approach in your career to building dashboards and KPI strategies that actually drive decision making, not just look good in meetings? And I actually think this is very important for all those leaders out there listening to an expert with your experience on how do I actually do this in a way that it's valuable for me and not just something pretty to show my boss.
Yeah, and I think that the one word answer to that is relevance.
Yeah.
And what's more important than the colors or the content is relevance. And in dealing with board of directors and really kind of doing the strategy to CEOs, the the culture should be based upon a very clear understanding of what are the mission objectives for the company. And once those mission objective company for the company are clearly established and clearly communicated, how are those expectations then translated to the individual business units, leaders, and subordinate organizations that are there? And if that is done well, then the relevance piece is answered. Now, how you derive that is, and I really focused in on, listen, when I'm going to be responsible for this part of the mission, I am going to be reporting on things that I can control. Anecdotally, I may be showing what I can't control, but I'm going to focus in on what I can control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you have relevance, you focus in on what you control, then the message to whoever is there, board of directors, CEO, C-level, then they will take it in context. And therein lies that they're not having to read through the notes, they're not having to understand, where you're coming from. It's already been born through the mission from the company. So it's very succinct, it's very direct, and you can get on and off stage very fast with,
That's
with
true. That's great advice, Jeff. I appreciate that. With advances in AI and analytics tools, data visualization and decision intelligence are evolving faster than ever as well. Talking more about the future, what excites you most about the future of business intelligence, and how do you think AI and automation will change the way leaders interact with data?
Great question, Brent. So, first of all, how do you define AI?
How do that
Because that's that.
that is a
Okay,
9 hour conversation.
I'll be able to answer that once I have the context for that. So what I look at is, obviously being a futurist, I see the future and I see what, where the world's going, where the technology's going, and the mad race to get there. However, what the term AI is thrown around so much. And trust me, I've made a lot of money in the stock market betting on this
AI.
AI. However, I believe that AI means sentient. We don't have that yet.
No, we do not.
We don't have anything close to it. So what
We
we're
want
talking
that.
about is with machine learning and large language models and those kind of contextual data stores that allow for um, very driven intelligence from data stores based upon the programming of the machine learning and the ability to do it. I see that it's absolutely if you look at Palantir and you look at their software and you look at what it does and how many man hours it would take to replicate that, there's distinct ROI right there. If you look at logistics and supply chain and the ability to inject weather data, geopolitical data, everything else, all of a sudden that starts to make really, really strong sense, especially when you're building a $50 million plane and your assembly line is going to stop
Yeah.
because you've got a strut that is now in and for like last week, Philippines, and there was a hurricane, and the ability not to have a mitigation for that, and all of a sudden a $50 million plane is sitting there, and you can't move it to the next part of the assembly line because this is absolutely got to go
Because of a
in.
50-cent part.
Correct. And when you're able to, correlate all of that, and I think, without an army of analysts being able to do it, the machine learning and the LLM and those intrinsic technologies absolutely are advancing the ability to be more efficient and more profitable across the board. Not to mention the other things with just logistical and defense.
My thought would be that using artificial intelligence for companies would be motivated in gaining a competitive advantage. Would you agree with that?
Um, Once again, the technology is only as good as its implementation, and there would have to be um, hopefully a lot of foresight into where that advantage would be, and then translate that into the distinct requirements for how it's implemented, how it's deployed, and how it's leveraged. And then, of course, um, nothing if it's not measured, if you don't have a yardstick to measure, hey, listen, these were the expectations. We were supposed to, our cager was going to grow by 5% with this new deployment because we were going to optimize new channels of growth or whatever it is. And you have to have that yardstick at the very beginning before you even deploy it to understand if it's successful or not. And I think a lot of companies um, are just expecting that it's going to figure itself out.
Well, I think that's kind of what I'm getting to is that once, look, if a business can be a first mover in AI, whatever that means, whether that's applying a large language model, whether that's doing some predictive analysis, whether that's simplifying processes within your business to make you more efficient, be able to respond to customers faster. I think the real issue is unless they're a first mover and they're really investing in creating, being the first one in, then they're really just responding to what's available. And then if you're just responding to what's available and you're like, oh, finally, like what everyone's doing now, Copilot. Oh, we can now use, well, now everyone uses Copilot or everyone. Now, if you don't use Copilot, you're at a competitive disadvantage. What I would like to see is that people stop responding
Yep.
to these technology things and start innovating, being that first mover, grabbing, figuring out how could we use. And I'm telling you, dude, and I've been in consulting for the past year and a half. Companies are not that I've kind of talked to other CIOs is they're just kind of waiting to see how people use this.
Yes.
Right. And they want to use AI, but they don't really know how to use it for their business. And so they're kind of waiting to respond. And I don't know what you think about it, but I think you should be a first mover and you should try to apply it differently than how it's being used. And I think that will set your business apart. I think it's that powerful. This isn't migrating to the cloud. This is something that if you're the first one in, you can change your business. Do you agree with that or am I off base?
No, no. I think in 1999, I became CIO of freeme.com.
Okay.
So internet is just booming.
Yep.
And 1999 and really first adopter, we had 50,000 users, first ASP with 50,000
Wow.
users. But I was also, involved in looking at how other companies were leveraging it. And right about that time, you had Netflix really kind of changing the marketplace, and you
Yes.
had the blockbusters that were thinking, internet's going to go this way, and
Yep.
and
And they
Netflix
were wrong.
heading down the road of streaming and really disruptive business model leveraging the internet. So I think if you kind of go back in time and you look at that, and there are some nuanced differences between the internet and AI, but there are some distinct similarities with regard to disruptive technologies and how companies are going to move ahead. And I think that it still requires a whole lot of thought about how you're going to leverage it, but you don't want to be the blockbuster.
No, you don't. And it's interesting. I have a friend that was an executive. I think he was the CEO at Planet Hollywood. Is that Hollywood Video? Whatever that one was called that competed with Blockbuster. And so we've talked about this a lot. The two things that Netflix, the two gambles that they took that buried the competition were one, they bet that streaming would become a thing. And two, most importantly, they bet on Amazon
Yep.
and they moved everything to the cloud
Yep.
and way before anyone else. And so, how my friend explained it to me was he basically said Blockbuster more so than their Planet Video, whatever that was called. Blockbuster more than them had all these assets. They had physical data centers, they had stores, and they had all this debt involved in all those physical assets. And it's not that they couldn't have done what Netflix did. It's that in order to scale all that back and then build it up would have taken 10 years.
The
and they were dead before they could even get that far.
the
And
interest
that was the real reason they were put out of business, was the technology and the model overnight, and just the inherent aspects of their business buried them. It wasn't anything that they did. They had all this real estate. Like, they needed to, and then they had physical data centers. And the other big mistake he said they made is they didn't really. So one was, obviously, Netflix was a mail home company, right? So they didn't have all this physical real estate. That was one. Two, they went to the cloud, whereas Blockbuster and Planet Hollywood Video or whatever, they believed that you build your own data centers. And that was
yes,
the other thing. So you could have never built your data centers up fast enough
correct.
to
Scalability.
compete. And that
Scalability.
buried them, and that killed them. But
But
that is a very good example.
the crazy thing about it is they had 800 times the money.
I know, but yeah, the funniest part is that they offered to buy them. We're like 50 million. They said no. Woo.
Yeah, crazy.
Should have taken that. Well, Jeff, I appreciate your insight. This was a lot of fun. One last fun question before we wrap up. Since this show is called the Tech Quarterback Show, I do always like to ask every guest, who's your favorite quarterback? Past, present, why? Who is your favorite QB?
Well, from 5 years old, I've been a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh no.
And let me tell you what,
Oh no.
I rode the wave with Tony Romo. I rode the wave. He is still my favorite quarterback. And to see him, certainly in his first rookie year as being an announcer, and the insight that
He's
he
so
brought
good, yeah.
is just an illustration of the intelligence, the game intelligence, the pocket intelligence that he brought in the game. Now, that being said, you can't win a Super Bowl unless you're surrounded and have a
That's
culture that's there. So yes, Tony Romo, I'm gonna stick with it. That's it.
so, Jeff, that's very funny that you bring that up. So literally last Thursday, I was watching my son's we were watching after his football practice. We went to watch the state semifinals for volleyball. It was at our school, and walked right by me was Tony Romo.
Oh my gosh. So
Tony's
so now is that your favorite
It
quarterback?
is not. I love Tony. I don't think Tony knows could pick me out of a lineup, but no, I love that Tony is part of our school community, but I know Tony is not my favorite quarterback, um, past or present or current. I am a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, and therefore I could never pick a Cowboy quarterback. Sorry, Tony. I do love Tony, and he's great, but no. Now it would be Josh Allen. In the past, it would be Jim Kelly. So
Yep.
those are my guys.
Good
Um,
choice. Good choice.
Jeff, good pick though. Next time I'll see him, I'll let him know. Jeff Smedley said you're his favorite quarterback of all time. Okay, you got it. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey from the drop zone to the data center. Oh, you like that? From the drop
Yes.
zone to the
Yes.
data center. And from leading large scale technology transformations to shaping the next generation of IT leadership. Your perspective on business intelligence, decision making, and what it truly means to build and lead high performing teams was awesome. And I know our listeners will take a lot away from the conversation. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, share your feedback, and join us next time. Until then, I'm Brent Chapman, and this has been the Tech Quarterback Show. Peace.